Welcome to the Power of Love show, sponsored by the D.D. Jackson Foundation, where we shine a light on loss and grief and how it impacts our lives. We are here to provide hope, resources, and a community so no one feels alone in their grief. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Power of Love show, sponsored by the D.D. Jackson Foundation, where we shine a light on loss and grief and how it impacts our lives. My name is TJ Jackson, and with me is my eldest brother, Taj Jackson.
What's up, T?
What's going on, Taj? How are you, man?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing great. I'm doing great. It is Wednesday, August 14th, 2024. And of course, we are live right now on Facebook and YouTube, but you may be listening to us via the podcast. Yes, each and every episode we do here at the Power of Love show gets ingested into the podcast world where you can listen to it on your own time. Remember, everyone, we are not licensed therapists. We are just ordinary people who've experienced loss in our lives. We've been impacted by it, and we have learned from it. And what we like to do here on the Power of Love show is share our opinions in an attempt to help you get through whatever it is you may be going through. Saying that, if you need professional help, we urge you to seek it and to find it. Please do not just rely on us. Taj Jackson, it's crazy because I feel like this week went by so fast. It felt like just yesterday when we last did this. It was a great show last week, and today we have another great show lined up with a special guest. But what we like to do here is obviously talk about our week and what maybe anything exciting going on. So let's kick that off. Has there been anything in the last 7 days that has been exciting that you want to share with the community?
Yes. School officially started for Taylor.
Ooh, nice.
For you, it seems like the week went by quick. For me, I'm in day 3 of taking her to school, and it's a new school, so it's a little interesting.
What grade, Taj?
Kindergarten. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Excited? Is she excited? Is she liking it? How's it been?
She actually likes school, but that's because she gets to meet people and all that stuff. So she's really excited about it. Obviously, for us, it's a new school, so it's all that newness and the new teacher and all that stuff. So we're being parents in that way.
Good, as you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
It's so crazy because Dee started 11th grade yesterday. It's just crazy, man.
11th grade.
It flies. Yeah, it flies so quickly, and it's been fun to watch her kind of grow into who she is. She's so ambitious, and AP this and AP that, and so it's been real. It's to the point where I gotta calm her down and say, "You sure you want to take all that?" And so
I thought you were going to say you were helping her out. I was like,
some of the math. I let her do her thing.
She's great. Yeah,
it's an opportunity for her to grow and and challenge herself, and I have to say I'm very proud of her. That's what she is doing. I, as her father, am monitoring if she's doing too much. It's a different time we live in where there's so much pressure that I feel one of my main roles is to make sure she's not overdoing it, which has been a departure for me. I'm used to always trying to push and nudge my kids.
Yeah, I was going to say that's pretty interesting.
It's different, man. I'm trying to slow her down. So either way, though,
like 11th grade better than 12th. I like being a junior better than being a senior. Believe it or not,
it was such a different experience for me because senior year I was barely there, and
you were not even there. You were
because we are traveling so much with 3T that I can't really compare them accurately. So I can't answer that. I can't answer that.
Yeah, it was senior year was sad for me because it was like knowing that the party's going to end, kind of, you know what I mean, in that way. Like I'm not going to see some of these people ever again. So
that's life, and what's crazy is what's been really hitting me before we continue on with our show. I've really gotten to a place where we always say it, time flies, time goes so quickly, but it's so true. I remember Didi's first day of high school, and she's already on the second half of it and already talking about senior year. So to anybody out there, just enjoy each and every day and as much as you can. And to any young ones that are watching this, enjoy that youth and experience life and try to grow from it, because it sure does seem to move faster and faster as you age.
Yeah, I would say that was probably the best advice you and Terrell gave me when
Yeah,
I had my kids. Is it goes by quick, just enjoy it,
it's
and
crazy.
try and slow it down. That was probably the best advice I've received from you guys.
I know there's countless more, but I get it.
There isn't.
Um,
That's why I was saying. Uh,
well, Todd, I think we are good to go. Before we introduce our guests, I do want to make sure for anyone who may be watching or listening for the very first time, you can go to ddjf.org to learn more about our foundation. It's the Dee Dee Jackson Foundation. And for those of you who may be heavy Facebook users, I suggest you to go ahead and be part of our Dee Dee Jackson Foundation official Facebook group. In that group, there's many like-minded people, and we have several of our guests that have joined, where you can, be a place of console for someone. You could support others, or you can talk about things you may be going through and receive some support. But it's a non-judgment area where our whole mission is pretty much implemented into that Facebook group, and that is to help and to support anyone who's going through difficult times. So just wanted to make sure I give that a shout out since it's been some time. Again, for those Facebook users and Instagram, you can go to at DD Jackson Foundation and give us a follow there. I think that's it, Taj. I think it's time to get on. We have a great show lined up. I'm excited for this guest. So let's get into it. On today's episode of the Power of Love Show, we welcome a special guest. Her name is Andrea Meyers. Andrea is a stay-at-home mother to 6 children. In 2021, her 5th baby daughter, Terra, died shockingly and unexpectedly during labor at 38 weeks and was delivered stillborn. Andrea struggled deeply with the death of her daughter and quickly realized how much grief and devastating loss impacted her life, particularly how society often minimizes baby loss. She found it hard to participate in her local community, and everyday tasks became challenging. She noticed how uncomfortable people became when she or her children mentioned Tara's death in conversation. With a background as a preschool teacher and family advocate, Andrea knew that talking about grief was important for her and her living children, who were also, of course, grieving the loss of their sister. After a year of processing the grief and trauma of stillbirth, Andrea made connections through social media and began speaking with other mothers who had experienced similar losses, as well as with stillbirth prevention advocates. Through speaking out and writing online, she found a therapeutic outlet, which led to the idea of creating shirts and other items for the grieving, featuring popular phrases and sayings from the perspective of those experiencing grief. The grief closet, yes. The grief closet has served as a way to give back to the community and acknowledge others' grief, while also providing Andrea with an outlet for her own pain. It has been the one thing that has felt fulfilling since her daughter's death. Here today to share more about our personal journey as well as work with the grief closet. Without much further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the Power of Love show, the one and only Andrea Meyers. Yes. Andrea, how are you?
I'm okay. I'm a little nervous.
Yeah, don't be nervous. Don't be nervous. It's so good to see you, and I thank you for joining us. First of all, did I get all the names correctly? I'm sensitive to that. So,
Andrea or Andrea? First
It's
of all,
Andrea.
he's been flip flopping. He's playing it safe. I've heard him say it both times.
Yeah, it's Andrea.
Okay. Andrea, I was flip flop. I was hedging my bets.
Yeah.
And did I get Tara's name right?
You did. Yeah, Terra.
Okay,
yeah.
good. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, first and foremost, Andrea, I want to thank you again for being here on behalf of my brother and our foundation and the Dee Dee Jackson board members. I just want to thank you for joining us and sharing your story and what you are up to. My first question is, I'm curious to know about your loss of Terra and how it impacted you and your family, and not only just in the long, not only just immediately, but also in the long term. And again, I should also say I want to send my condolences on behalf of my brother to you and your family for your loss.
Thank you. Yeah.
So yes, if you could just tell us about the impact it had for you and your family, and that way those who are maybe listening who are experiencing a similar thing can maybe understand what you went through.
Yeah, it's just like the most traumatic thing ever. It just completely took our world and everything we kind of thought we knew about life, and it flipped it upside down. My kids, it's their first experience with death, and for it to be about a baby was really challenging and confusing for them. I had left my house in labor to go and have their sister. So they had tracked the entire pregnancy with me. They felt her move. It was my daughter's first sister. So she had all these big plans of things that she was going to do with her sister. And they were just so excited to know it's finally happening. They're counting down every day. Is the baby coming? Is she coming home? Do I get my sister? And so to leave, with that excitement, and we're at the hospital and find out that she actually is not alive. Her heart, was not beating. And at that point, we had no idea why or what happened. It was just earth shattering. It just pops that little reality bubble that you've been living in, and you suddenly realize that this is just not making sense, and you're just disoriented and you're so confused. And so we were just in shock. A lot of the feelings that they were having were similar to my own, of just why did this happen to our family? Why us? They took it really personal and felt like maybe we did something wrong, or we weren't doing something right for this to happen to us, and it's not happening to other people. So a lot of just big feelings and emotions that we were trying to have to navigate through. And I'm trying to help my kids while I'm also not really having the answers myself either. And so that was just really challenging in the immediate. They had a lot of questions, and really were just taken off guard and surprised, just like I was, that their sister died. It didn't make sense.
Understandably, to go through all those emotions. I'm curious to know, as mom, you're dealing with the loss of your baby, and then having to find a way to manage and help your other babies deal with it.
Yeah.
How did you get your own time to grieve, and what was that process like?
You're short on time when you're a mom, especially of kids. And so I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just kind of found myself drifting and trying, just really learning about grief. And in any, I could be folding laundry and put a podcast in, because I just really needed to know what I was feeling and what was happening to me, and learn more about grief and what it's like to live with grief. And just that really was probably my own version of therapy, and my self-care was just exposing myself to learning about grief.
Had you, I know you said it was your kids, first real loss. Had you had any experience dealing with grief or significant loss?
Not so I do have, I've witnessed grief, traumatic deaths in our family, and both my husband and my side. My own father, he died by suicide about 6 years ago. And so that was probably, we were estranged. So it wasn't like somebody underneath my roof, but as far as the core unit of a family, he's my dad. And so there was some mourning and grieving there. But, I've been with my husband since we were 16 years old, and I was very much a part of his aunt passing away from breast cancer, and literally there in the room. And then I really got to watch them as a family grieve, and kind of how grief really impacted them. And so I was more of a witness to grief at that point. And so for this to have happened directly to me and to one of my children was really not something that I had any experience or idea, nothing, just totally not, I had no idea what we were going through or going to deal with. How it's deep.
Yeah. Very. I can Not easy at all. Now, something that I said in the intro that you mentioned that I completely agree with is that society often minimizes baby loss.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not going to ask why you think that is unless you want to answer, but my real question is, what were some of the specific challenges you face when trying to navigate your grief in a community that may not fully understand or acknowledge it as true grief or true
Yeah.
loss?
Yeah.
I would love to hear you just talk a bit about that.
Yeah, it's kind of the response that you get when people found out that you had a baby die, in pregnancy especially, is not how they respond to other types of death. And so, people will say things like, you can try again. And like, to me, I'm like, I didn't try to have a baby. I had a baby and she died. And so that was the truth of it. But by saying like, oh, you can try again, it was like this mythical thing that we had like attempted and failed at. And that was the other part that really hurts people when you say things like, you can try again. And then, or you can have another one. Like, they're just so easy to replace this human life. When somebody's uncle dies, we don't say, well, you could get another uncle, or find another uncle somewhere. Like, nobody responds that way. And so we really acknowledge, the relationship between, an individual and the grief that you feel from that death. But when it comes to babies, we kind of just view them as replaceable, and that we can get another baby. Or for me in particular, I had living children. So people would often direct the attention onto them. Well, look at all these blessings that you have. You have these 4 beautiful blessings. So then I'm like, so I don't get to be upset that my child died, that my daughter died, because I got to be grateful that at least I have these 4 kids over here. And so you really kind of, it was like they didn't value a baby's death in the same way. A lot of people think it's easier because you didn't know them, quote unquote. And for me, I try to explain, like, I don't love my 10-year-old son more than I love my 2-year-old daughter, because I've known him longer, and that we really can't measure love by the length of time we've known somebody. It's about the depth of our love. And that for mothers and parents, especially, like that mother-child bond, like the depth is there. No matter how long you've known your child for, you love them just as deeply.
Yeah. And I really thank you for sharing that.
We're not even mothers, and just that connectiveness, I can understand it in that way. And I know, as being a father, what that bond is in that way. And it really is unfair, because there isn't a time. It's like time doesn't exist in there. That bond is immediate.
Like, at what point in your child's life did you start to really love them? It's like what you feel like you're being asked. And it's like that you really love your kids before you love the idea of having children, before they're even here in front of you. And so it's really something I feel like needs to be corrected and explained.
Yeah, much so.
Andrea, how many years has it been since you lost Terra?
It was just 3, July 16th. She would have been 3 years old.
I'm sorry. This is why I asked that, because for those who may be watching who literally just experiencing it, I have a friend that actually experienced a stillbirth as well last year. But what I would love to hear from you, is there any advice you'd give to someone, whether it's on the anniversary date of the loss, or if it's even a month just happened, and just what kind of advice can you, as someone who's been 3 years into it, could you give someone who's in less time dealing with it?
Yeah, I think, I'll even post sometimes on my Instagram, like, ways that you can word a message to send to them, because a lot of people just don't know what to say. But for stillbirth especially, it's very hard to have known, this person that nobody else got to see or meet or experience as a part of your family. So they really go unrecognized in a way, because nobody saw them physically, as part of your family. So always just acknowledging that they were real and that they existed, because even in your own head, sometimes, like, it's such a short amount of time, and it's so traumatic that in the aftermath, sometimes you're even questioning, like, was this real? Like, was she really, you know, I held her in my arms, but she's not here and I don't see her. And it's very confusing for a mother, especially, to be separated from her newborn baby like that. You still go through all the postpartum things and you really feel like your baby should be somewhere, but you can't find them. And so there's really so many layers and so much complexity to what happens when you lose a baby in that way. And so for someone that's going through it, I would, you know, go into it not expecting anything from them. Don't expect them to reply to you. Don't expect them to invite you over and let you come sit. Like, really just honor and give them their space, but still check in or say, hey, I'm going to drop a meal off on your front doorstep. Don't feel pressure to open it or talk to me, like, but it's going to be there. So there's really some tangible things that you can do for someone that's like in the depths of it, that, you know, they never forget that stuff.
It's great. Now, your background as a preschool teacher and family advocate played a role in how you approached grief. I'm curious to know, how did these experiences shape your journey through loss, and how did they help you support your children during this difficult time?
Yeah, really, it was helpful to kind of have that training and education that I had to have for my job. I worked for a Head Start program, so it was a federally funded program that served low-income children. So a lot of the kids that I was working with, they were dealing with some very stressful situations as far as like domestic violence and child abuse. And a lot of them were in the foster care system. And so I had been, you know, exposed to having difficult conversations with kids of a very young age and kind of understood how they might process things in a certain way. And it was helpful to just kind of have that language to use. I think that kids ask a lot of questions and we don't always know, like, do we tell them the truth right now, or should we make this like less messy because we don't want to disturb them further? And especially with stillbirth, people will refer to the baby as born sleeping. And so for me, I knew that from a child development aspect, it was really important to separate and differentiate between death and sleep. And that one day, you know, they didn't know about like cremation or burial yet, but that would be really confusing for them to think about a burial or a cremation for a sleeping baby. You know, that doesn't make sense, because to a kid, you go to sleep and you wake up. And so I knew, you know, that we weren't going to, you know, refer to her as a baby born sleeping, that we were going to, you know, talk about the fact that she is not alive and what that really means. And so that helped me a lot. And just kind of knowing how kids think, and that if you don't provide them with all of the details because you think you're trying to kind of protect them in a way, they will start to create their own stories, and they will start to tell themselves, you know, and come up with reasons why or what this means. And a lot of times they're not accurate or truthful. And so, you know, it's helpful to be as honest as you can. And I just knew that because of my experience with child development and some of those things that I dealt with before.
After about a year of processing your grief, you began connecting with other mothers and stillbirth prevention advocates through social media. How did these connections and your connections with them, how did they influence your healing process?
Oh, it was huge. And I never saw myself like getting online friends, you know, but when a stillbirth happens to you, like, your birth story doesn't really look like all these other moms at the mom group, you know, that just had babies. You're different. And so it was really helpful to find people that I felt like I could fit in with now, because we are all going through and experiencing some of these same hardships and the struggle of what it means to have given birth to a baby that's not alive. And so finding them was really helpful too, as far as like, I didn't really know much about stillbirth until it happened to me. And so you're left with all these questions. And so being able to connect with people that had the information that I was looking for was so helpful for me, because, you know, it took me a long time to find, which I hope that we can change through a lot of this advocacy, you know, and we can get to people sooner as far as like educating on prevention and what stillbirth is, because it really shouldn't be you experiencing one be your first time learning about it. So finding these nonprofits and these organizations of other mothers who are taking their baby stories and speaking out in hopes of changing, you know, and preventing this from happening happening in the preventable cases, because there's a lot of preventable cases. I didn't even know that. Like, all my misconceptions about stillbirth are what a lot of the general population has. And so me learning more about it and some of the questions that I had, has been helpful as far as me then going and sharing and educating myself. Now I know what I'm talking about, because at first I really had no idea what I was talking about. I didn't know what happened to me at all.
Now, like us, you utilize your loss and to create something to help others. I'm talking about the grief closet. And the grief closet emerged from your need for a therapeutic outlet, much like DDJ at the Power of Love show did. Can you share more about the inspiration behind the grief closet and how creating these items has helped you cope with your grief?
Yeah. I'm sure that you guys know, but when you've had something terrible happen to you and you still have to like find yourself participating in society, like it's really hard, because not everybody out there knows what's happened to you. Mm-hmm. So like I found myself, shopping at Target a week later, and the cashier told me, "Have a nice day," and in my head and heart, I'm like, what? Like, why? The birds are chirping outside. Like, why are the birds chirping? Like, I'm not happy. Like, this doesn't make sense. Like, people are just out here acting normal. Like, don't they know my baby just died? Like, no, they don't know. And so I was having a hard time, just even like mundane, like simple things like going to the grocery store, because you're just hit with all these things that affect you in a different way. And so I would read things on people's shirts like good vibes only. And in my head, I'd like flip that, because I'm like, well, I don't really have good vibes right now. I could offer you some grief vibes, but I don't have good vibes. Or it's like, what's the other one? Not all who wander are lost. I would see that on vehicles and like in stores. And I'm like, well, some who wander are lost. It's me, me right now. Like, I'm lost. I don't know where I'm going. So I just like felt like I was getting hit with all these like positive messages everywhere I went. And I'm like, I can't relate to this anymore. Like, I don't have just these good vibes flowing and I can just flip this in my brain, And so I would just kind of start doing that on my own as I came across these messages that felt like it was like a personal attack against me. Everywhere I go, someone's saying something or I'm reading something. And so I would just, and I'm like, man, that's not a shirt I would wear, but I would wear a shirt that says grief vibes. And so that's kind of like what sparked this interest in like putting it on a t-shirt. And I kind of just went down this like rabbit hole on the internet of how to do that. And then it became a hobby, like something I could look forward to. I was learning new skills that I had never, learned before. And I just found myself for the first time after Terra died, like looking forward to just opening my computer and working on this. And so that was new because I didn't care about anything before.
That's great. Thank you for that answer. Has there been any meaningful responses or stories you've heard from others who have connected with the grief closet?
Yeah, I something I do kind of behind the scenes is I'll get to know families and what they connect with their babies or their loved ones. Like a lot of people, they connect with hummingbirds, or they connect with rainbows and just different things that make them think of their person. And so just like as a random act of kindness, I would get to know them and like what they connect with, and I would make them something custom and then just kind of creepily ask them for their address and send it to them. And that was like so fulfilling, because they're like, who's this random stranger that's like paying attention and cares, about what I'm going through in my loss. And they're so they would just express to me that like, some of them are like, that's the kindest thing anyone's ever done for me. Like that, that to think that somebody somewhere was impacted by my story, picked up on the little details that we connect with as a family and created something. And so that's really like more of a behind the scenes of something that I do for people. But like, as far as like a customer perspective, I have people that every time they order, they will send me a message just about what the shirt makes them feel, and just how nice it is to know that someone over in California, while they're in New Jersey, is is working on this or creating this for this group of people that's really hurting and still out there in society. So just knowing how what I'm doing is making other people feel is really fulfilling.
What exactly do you guys do at the Grief Closet? If you could tell, if you
Okay. It's just me. So it's me. I built my own website. I do the customer service. Like I'm a very, very part-time employee, but I make everything. I just, when I have downtime or I feel inspired by something that I read or saw, I come home and I design something and I know how to upload it onto a product. And so it's called print on demand. And so that's made it really easy to kind of, for e-commerce and people that are starting out, making these small businesses. So that's what I do.
Very cool. No, cool. Yeah. I just shared an image for those who are watching on Facebook and YouTube. I just shared an image where you can learn more about the Grief Closet. You can go to thegriefcloset.com or check out the Instagram, which is at the Grief Closet. And it says the Grief Closet, clothing established in 2023, 10% of our profits will be donated to various nonprofit organizations fighting to end preventable stillbirth. I absolutely love that. It's kind of, it's, how, let me ask you this. How have you felt starting and working on the Grief Closet? Because I know it's just been a year now. How has that helped you with your healing process, with your loss of Terra? How has the Grief Closet helped you?
I view it as like a project that her and I are working on together. And so like as a mom, we have all these things, like you have your son that you might take to soccer practice, or you have, your daughter that does ballet. And so like when you have a child that's died, you don't get to do things with that child, and you really miss out on that with them. And so the Grief Closet for me has kind of become like this thing that I get to do with her on a spiritual level, and it keeps her a part of my life. And a lot of people think, if you're talking about grief all the time, like you're not moving on or you're doing something incorrectly. And like, for me, I'm here to say, like, I talk about grief all the time. I created this like little business out of it and it's helping me. It's not hindering me. There's not something wrong with me. I'm not moving on,
Yeah. Well, I commend you. And I think that's something that our society needs to figure out, because I think sometimes, and it's sad, I just don't know where it originated from, but I think sometimes we think that by not talking about it, we're turning the page, or by shunning any emotions or any grief thoughts we have, that we are still in it if we think that way, or still mired in something. It's not that's not the case. And I always love it when we have guests such as yourself who express that in their own words, that this is the way I'm moving forward and able to grow. I mean, that's how it's been for us. I mean, we had a devastating loss of our mom, and doing the foundation has been actually incredibly healing. I never would have predicted this, but it is. So I just commend you for doing that. And I love how you say it's like your thing together. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
Now, Taj, did you have anything? You want me to keep going?
I snuck and checked out the website, which is amazing. the items in there in that way. There's some really, really cool not only designs, but I love what you did with it in terms of the wordplay, because you're right, that is needed in that way. I love the honesty of like, I'm not having a good day, or the grief vibes one that had the retro vibe to it, and everything. And I love that aspect of it, and that we always talk about it in this podcast thing, in terms of, I'm a firm believer of taking that loss and that grief and making something positive out of it in that way. And that's what you did. You took command of it, and then you also it's just amazing in that aspect of it. I just really, that's what I was doing. If people saw my eyes looking elsewhere and whatever, I wasn't reading something. I was looking at all the cool things in there in that way. And so Yeah, I always commend people for that aspect of it, because you're right. You don't move on from grief. You constantly have to live with it, and there is that misconception that, oh, just turning the page on it in that way. But it's all, I mean, TJ knows as well. We're going on, this month will be, I think, 30 years, the 30th
Oh,
anniversary of our mom's death, and it's like, it's gonna hit just like it always hits in that way.
yeah.
So, but TJ is now looking. We got to get back to that. We're
I'll
both going to do this.
flag. I'll send
Everyone
you some.
check it out. The Grief Closet. It is amazing, and there is something for everyone in there. That is.
I have to say, I am.
I saw your face. I know my brother's face. So I was like,
I have to say,
yeah,
when he mentioned that, I was like, let me go check it out. And I forget I could always do that. So I'm happy I was able to share some of the images on the screen. But you really are doing your thing. And the designs are really, really strong. Did you go to art school or something?
No, I'm all self-taught. I went to YouTube University.
Yeah, it's a good university. You know?
Well, yeah.
No student loans there.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, the designs are great. I really
Thanks.
liked a lot of the shirts, the ones that I just saw. So well done there.
Thank
So in addition to the Grief Closet, you also are managing an Instagram account called Grieving Like a Mother, where you express your grief and love with a touch of dark humor and sarcasm. How has this platform allowed you to explore different facets of your grief? And what role does humor play for you in your healing process?
It's a way to be social with with people that understand and that you can relate to. And so those are my girls. I feel like, we can go on and just talk to each other about whatever we just went through at the grocery store or what, and we all get it and can support each other. And we find ourselves in so many awkward conversations just as moms of children who have died. We look at things so differently from this different lens. And so to be able to kind of have a place to all connect and talk about some of these uncomfortable conversations that we get in, or things that people are going on and on about, and we might have this dark thought that comes in to our brain, but it's not an appropriate place to share it. We can go and share memes and talk from this grieving mother perspective that nobody else is going to get. And so it's just a way of kind of being able to release and break that tension that we have to hold in these normal conversations with all these normal people. We're not really normal anymore.
Yeah. I think that's great too. So Grieving Like a Mother, would it be wrong to assume for anyone it's a place for those who have lost, for moms who have lost a child?
Yeah, I've made a lot of connections with moms who have lost adult children. They've lost young children in traumatic ways, and just all kinds of it. It's really from the perspective of a grieving mother's heart. So, at any age that you've lost your child, it hurts. And so, and it's really painful. So anybody.
Okay. Yeah. Instagram for those who are listening, at Grieving Like a Mother. Go check it out. Yeah. I could tell you, I have not seen the Instagram channel. What would you say? The Instagram profile yet? But I could tell it's a strong one by the Grief Closet and your personality, Andrea. I think you're a special person. So for anyone who is interested, make sure to go check out at Grieving Like a Mother. Now, I mentioned this in the beginning, and our community knows this, that the word hope plays a bit important part for us. We believe, obviously, that hope is an important theme in the grieving process. I'm curious to know, have you been able to find hope after your very challenging and difficult loss? And what role, if any, does hope play for you in your day-to-day life now?
Yeah. Your relationship with hope really changes, because all the things we kind of hope for are really just for nothing bad to happen to us or our family or anybody we love, right? That's what we hope for. But when reality kind of hits you in the face with that doesn't work and bad things are still going to happen, the perspective of hope for me has shifted to, instead of just hoping that these bad things aren't going to happen, I'm going to hope that when they do, I'm going to figure this out and how to carry on and make some kind of life for myself, because I am still alive. And I feel like, you know, something that kind of clicked for me is like realizing that if terrible, unimaginable things can happen to you, really good, unimaginable things can happen to you too. And so that hope, you know, is always there, that as long as I can just keep myself alive, I'm allowing myself this time to see how this kind of plays out, this like thing of life, right? Like I could win $4 million next week, move to an island and sell my shirts to the tourists. Like, I don't know, you know? So if these bad things can happen, it's not impossible that something really cool and good could happen, you know, and it doesn't make up for the loss that I endured, because my life's never going to feel better than it did when all my kids were alive. It's never going to feel better. But there might come a day where I don't feel as bad as I do, or, you know, and if I take that out of the equation of not having hope at all, like I know that for me, I will end up in a very dark place. And that as long as I'm here on earth, I'm going to allow myself this chance to hold out hope, you know, for something really cool to happen.
That's great. And speaking of hope, what are your hopes for the Grief Closet, and how do you envision it continuing to support others who are navigating the difficult journey of loss? Like, what's your hopes in 3 to 5, 7, 10 years for the Grief Closet?
Well, obviously, I'd like to retire my whole family, and so I would love to have them all working for me. And but really, I would love to make enough money through, you know, the profits to donate and to give back to. There's a lot of cool people that are making like bereavement boxes for families. Like the ones the hospitals give you are very generic and old, but like there's a lot of cool people making these boxes with really unique and special items. I'd love to be able to like contribute to those and donate, you know, things like that. And then I'd love, when I first started selling, I really tried out a couple of different platforms. And one of them was a wholesale platform where people purchased in bulk and they sold in their stores. And I had quite a few sales and people interested in bringing grief products into their gift shops and, you know, their little stores. And so that I could, you know, that's something that I would look forward to kind of working with, getting things into stores and working that out so that more people, you know, while they're out and about, their dad could have died yesterday and they walk in this store and see a shirt talking about grief, and that's going to hit them, you know, different than a good vibes shirt would hit them. So
yeah.
I have one more question that is kind of like a variant of what Taj would ask, but it's not. It's a little bit more elevated, more interesting.
I knew that was coming.
But my question to you, Andrea, is: have you ever considered writing a book?
Well, I wrote a little children's book and did like Amazon KDP for this rainbow. There's this whole story with rainbows that we have, and I wrote a poem, and I was able to turn it into like a printable book that you can find on Amazon. It's a children's book, but I could see myself. I just need the time, you know, you guys. I need some time to sit down and write. I would probably start at 1987 when I was born, and I don't know if I could just start, you know, from where I'm at right now. Like, I'm not much of a pen to paper person.
Yeah, I just feel you have so much, and you're so creative, and you have a very cool way of saying challenging and difficult things and handling it. That a book, I think, is something to strongly consider. But trust me, I get it. With all the kids you have, time is not something that is just sitting out there for. So I completely get it. One day. Mm-hmm. Taj Jackson, anything else you have for Andrea?
No, I mean, I always say this. I'm going to try and say it differently, but I always do appreciate people that come on here and share their stories in that way. But I love how the artistic aspect of it, and how you took the bull by the horns and you just figured it out in that way, and you knew you were going to do it. And I just love that idea of it in that way. But yeah, a lot of the stuff resonated in that way. TJ knows, like, a miscarriage is nothing close to what you went through in that way, but it's on a degree of it, but in that way. And so when Tiana had a miscarriage that one time, it was, I got consoled, I guess the word is, from people that I didn't even know had the same scenario.
Yeah.
So you're on a grander scale in that way. And I commend your strength in that way, because I know what that did to her. And so that's why I'm very sensitive to not only your journey, but I'm so impressed of how you've turned that grief into something where you've helped others.
Thank you. I'm sorry about your miscarriage too.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Andrea. So it's that time. I gave you a bit of a heads up before we even started. We like to close our show by giving our guest a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, however much time you want to talk about anything you want. It doesn't have to be on the topic of grief or loss or any of that stuff. It can be, but it can also be about what your go-to Netflix show is right now, or what song you could do a great breakdance to, or what's your favorite lyrics, whatever you want to talk about. Andrea, this is the time to leave our community with whatever you want to leave them with. So with that said, the floor is yours.
Okay. I think I just have to share like stillbirth prevention resources, because I'm so passionate about that, and that needs to be a part of like our standard of care, is educating and just, talking about stillbirth. And so there's really great organizations for people that are interested in learning more, if you're pregnant or you're planning to try to become pregnant, that just kind of arming yourself with this knowledge, can really make a difference in your pregnancy outcome. And that stillbirth prevention is not offered freely, because they really don't want to scare people into thinking it can happen to them. But the reality is that it is happening, and that the people that it's going to happen to would love a little heads up that it's like a possibility. So I came across, after the fact, but like Push for Empowered Pregnancy, Count the Kicks, Measure the Placenta. These are all organizations that are really speaking out and trying to like normalize this conversation around stillbirth and fight to end the preventable ones from happening, because there's no reason for it. They're preventable, and there's changes that we can make, if as a community we all start to really put our heads together and come up with solutions. And so there's a Shine for Autumn Act, which is a bill that they're trying to get passed that's really going to help, with data collection and research. And so a lot of these things I'm passionate about, because if I can be a small part in helping this not happen to anybody else, then, that's the best you can do, I think.
Well said. Love it.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing all that information. And I agree with you. I think there's so much room for growth, and I think we've come a long way as a society, but I think there's still a lot of room for growth. So it's people like you, though, Andrea, that are helping bridge that gap, and you are doing your part. So again, on behalf of my brother and our foundation, we just want to thank you for doing your part and sharing your journey. Now, there's a couple, we like to close the show before we say goodbye. We like to highlight a couple comments. One is from Sheila.
She lives probably by you guys. She's in Thousand Oaks, California.
Not far at all. So Sheila is sending you love, my beautiful niece. Very, very cool. Caroline says, creating something to highlight the legacy for the person you lost is the best way to move forward, in my opinion. Carla adds, thank you, Andrea, for providing a much needed service. And Tiffany says, Andrea really is a brave and strong woman for using her pain and using it to help other people in the same situation. It's very noble. And then the final comment that I wanted to highlight is just from one of our community members, Angel, who says, I recently lost my grandmother and it's been really hard to cope with. I was really close to her. I miss her so much. Angel, we are sending all our love and condolences to you. And we are here for you, not only just us, the community. Don't forget you have the Facebook group, but just know that you are not alone, and that we all are thinking of you and sending our love. Andrea, I think that is it. Did we miss anything? Is there anything else you want to mention or anything else?
I could talk for like 5 hours.
Okay, well,
Cut me off now.
no, so I do want to just say thegriefcloset.com, and on Instagram, you could do the grief closet as well on Instagram. But and make sure to check out the Grief Closet, because there are some really, really cool shirts. I'm going on right after. I think I'm going to order a shirt myself. There's some cool shirts on there. But then also Instagram, Grieving Like a Mother, which I think is another really cool thing you are doing. So Andrea, on behalf of my brother and our foundation and the community, I thank you for giving us this hour and spending your time with us and sharing your journey.
Oh, thanks for having me. Yeah.
Okay, so that is it, everyone. We are going to close out the show. We will see you all next Wednesday at 1 p.m. on behalf of my brother Taj. Anything else, Taj? Am I good?
Oh, you're good.
Okay. We will see you all next week. Thanks again for watching, and take care of yourselves. Adios, everyone.